seeing things that are wrong in the world and saying, okay, I'm not just going to complain about that, but I want to be a part of the solution. And there are so many major humanitarian, environmental challenges. Like, an entrepreneur needs to start with a problem, and talk about a great green space for problem is finding a business solution for some of these, major challenges of our day. Like, I'm so proud of what we've built so far, and we're just at the beginning, it feels like.
I just admire how Giselle uses trust as currency because people love now what they're doing. People want to build it, make it better, and people see the value of the platform.
Welcome to the future of business.
Welcome to the New Build podcast, presented by Bubble, where every other week we explore how the playbook for entrepreneurship is changing thanks to evolutions in AI, software, and culture. I'm Abhinav Narayan, video producer at Bubble, and for today's episode, I spoke with founder and CEO Giselle Gonzales and product lead Olena Voloshyna to learn more about how this new era of tech and entrepreneurship allowed them to build an impact-driven business in which growing commercially and doing good for the world are not just equally valued in the private sector, but unified as one effort. They also had a lot of valuable things to say about building a team that thrives on trust. Stick around after for some Bubble announcements, but for now, let's dive into my conversation with Giselle and Olena at EqualReach.
Hi, everyone. My name is Giselle Gonzales, and I'm the founder and CEO of EqualReach.
Hi, everyone. My name is Olena Voloshyna, and I'm product lead at EqualReach.
Just to get started, I like to ask our guests if they could tell us a little bit more about the business.
We have been around for the last 2.5 years or so, kind of crazy to think about. But EqualReach connects refugee talent around the world with dignified digital work opportunities. And we operate as a freelancing marketplace to make this possible. So we support projects like digital marketing, web development, and more. But all of this has been really 10 years in the making. 10 years ago, I was a freelancer myself, and I was tasked on this project to go and travel Europe's refugee route to document the realities of what was happening. So I went from Greece all the way up to Germany, meeting with volunteers, locals, refugees, and just seeing what the realities were like. And that experience really shaped me. And kind of fast forward a couple of years, I then went into do my master's and focused on this emergence of digital work among refugees, which was not a cool thing to be researching pre-COVID. No one was really looking at digital work as this new frontier of the future of work. But then COVID hit, I started working in a big tech company, and I found myself managing the very types of work that refugees struggle to access. And so I took all of those learnings and that research, and I basically brought it as a pilot and realized that my team in a massive company could drive significant business and social impact by sourcing our work intentionally. It wasn't creating new kind of side CSR projects. It was leveraging the projects that every business has, but then sending that to teams where it could have a dramatic impact on bolstering regional economies, supporting individuals who are often overlooked by the private sector. And so after doing that for a couple of years, I realized, okay, there's something here. And I had spent so many years in this space. I knew so many great partners around the world who were doing training and development for, we had MIT software developers who are sitting in a refugee camp and no business knew they existed. And I realized the big gap in this market is the market access of how do we actually get people who are job ready? How do we get them access to work? And not just through full-time employment, but looking at the realities of where someone is. Someone doesn't need to relocate around the world. They need a job where they are, whether that's in a refugee camp, a city, a host community or country, or in their own country, maybe in another place that they had to relocate to. And so our whole model is built from a lot of, those 10 years of learnings into how do we make dignified work the norm and change the way that the private sector outsources for good.
And Olena, can you tell us about your background and how your path to EqualReach took shape?
Yeah, I'm now a product lead at EqualReach, and my main role is to decide what we build, when we build it, manage tech team as well in terms of building on Bubble. Speaking of my background, I'm from Ukraine, so I'm a refugee myself. And at some point, when I moved to the UK, I met Giselle, and I started as an intern. So I represented EqualReach during Bubble Immerse program. And then, I just stayed with them, and it was already almost 1.5 year. My background is brand design, XUI design. I've completed the bootcamp at University of Birmingham while looking for those work opportunities, basically. And then I met Giselle, and all my like my work experience and personal experience was combined, so I can apply it here now, working at EqualReach.
Yeah, I'd read that your paths crossed either right before or somehow around Bubble's Immerse program. I wonder if we could just go back to that time a little bit, discuss what that looked like and how that entered the picture, and maybe how that opened some options for where to take EqualReach next.
Yeah. So when we started EqualReach, everything was manual. We really wanted to figure out what were the mechanisms that we needed to build and figure out, how contracting worked, how international vetting and compliance and all these things that were kind of the foundations of before you then got to the platform stage. And then I heard about the Immerse program and loved what I had seen of Bubble, and realized I applied, and then we got in and we got selected. And then I realized how many hours it would take to become an expert on Bubble, do this program, because really the whole program is built to build out an MVP within this 3-month or so period in this incredible cohort of other mission aligned organizations. And I realized, okay, if I do this, I'm not going to be able to grow all the other elements of the business. We had projects active already with real clients and real teams. And so then I was just in a scramble of, I need to find someone that I trust, who I think would be a great member of the team to be the representative. And so Bubble was that kick in the pants that I needed to go out and find a product lead for us, pre-product. And so I messaged a couple of people. They put, my ask out in a couple of WhatsApp groups, and I met with a number of potential candidates. And when Olena and I got on a call, I don't know how you heard about it, but when we got on the call, it was just like, it just clicked. And I think one of the things that she said to me was how she really, like, a big element of her when she thinks about design is like leading with empathy and empathetic design. And I'm like, that is core to why we exist as a business and what we need to carry through. And I think, so we met through this, and then I was like, great, welcome to the team. Also, you're going to represent us and give up, all this time to build this platform and make it come to life. And she was game. Yeah, that was the starting point. And then we realized we love working together. I realized she is one of the funniest people that I know. And so it just, she's been an integral part of the team ever since.
It was a surprise, actually, because during my bootcamp, Birmingham University UX UI bootcamp, we held 3 modules. One of them was coding, and I can't say that I enjoyed it too much, because I was like, it's something that I'm interested in. I would love to be able to do this, but then it's so complicated, and also it's developing and changing every day. And I understood that, being an expert in this area in coding, it would just take all my, lifetime. But then when I heard about Bubble, I thought, oh, this looks cool, actually, because I know all the principles, like basic principles are the same, but you don't need to be this math genius, go into this all the backend details, which seemed good to me. And then my experience in branding and UX UI as well was useful, because instead of spending time of coding, I could just go to Bubble and intuitively find the way, what do I do, how it works, and change UI. And then Bubble Immerse program also was really life-changing to me as well, because I met all those people who had an idea. Instead of finding a huge team of code developers, just to know the basics of it and start this MVP and try this idea. I just remember this one thing, that when I was already on this bootcamp, UX UI bootcamp, I've realized at some point that I do love to do some branding stuff. I do love to see how it works, from UX UI perspective. I do love to to see all the details of the product. And before, I thought I was just nosy. I was working on branding, but then I was always going to someone and telling, I think this could be better. Shall we maybe implement this? And I thought like, it's not a good quality of me. Like, being nosy, telling people what to do, always these ideas, disturbing all the working process. And then at some point I realized this is actually like a product lead thinking model, the ability to work on the whole product.
Yeah.
When we have all these experienced, talented people, I can explain how I see this and how I want it to look like, and then they will just do it. And it was kind of a dream job.
And I will say that mentality is perfect for a startup because you have to step into so many new spaces. You have to do a ton of context switching and learn all elements of the business. And especially then to be able to feed that into the product is a great attribute that Olena has.
Absolutely. One of the reasons why I am so excited to have you both on the show is A, I think the mission is fantastic. B, I think you are our first guests who have built a mission-driven or impact-driven startup so that we get to showcase on the show. And I think there's a lot of people who might be listening. I think there's a lot of really instructive lessons that we can learn from your story. So I'd really love to talk more about EqualReach and talk about how you have essentially built a business where the mission and the business model are almost one and the same. The only way that EqualReach makes money is if refugee talent gets paid. You specifically call out the word dignified work. And I'd love to just drill down on that a little further and get a better sense of what does dignified translate to you as?
I think dignity is seeing someone for the wholeness of who they are, not a label, not someone that you could use and just get something from. And I think it's the opposite of exploitation. And so often what I saw in the research that I did for years around just the digital economy in general, and then especially true for refugees and displaced communities trying to access digital opportunities, is exploitation is rife. There's so many, I think especially like our model is B2B. We work with vetted teams around the world. Like that's a unique value proposition that we bring. But so many individuals there are so many models that go after a B2C route where you have individuals competing for the same pool of work, typically, where in order to stay competitive, there's an incentive to charge bottom of the barrel prices, to work unhealthy, irregular hours. There are so many different kind of layers that can make work exploitative rather than dignified. And so it, for me, from a research lens, kind of started from, well, what do I not want to be? What is not working in this market? And how do we then build a counter narrative and show not just another like researcher that says, this is not good, they're doing it terribly. I'm like, okay, well, I can see the examples of what bad looks like. How do we build an example of what good looks like and apply dignity in a work setting and in a business setting?
You talked about going through Europe, learning these things from the displaced talent that was there and working as a freelancer to try and, stretch that access further. At some point, it sounds like there's a decision that is made to not just try and optimize where possible, but to actually take a full step forward, start something yourself, and really try and build a solution from the ground up. Can you walk us through a little bit more what that decision point looked like?
Yeah, and it was a slow burn. I mean, I say this has been 10 years in the making because really it was so many years of me just like, I don't have a lived experience myself of having been displaced. And so I just saw from people who started as interviewees and then became friends. And I saw how their life unfolded past, when I met them in a meatpacking facility in Serbia that had been converted into a refugee camp. And then they made it to Germany, and seeing what their life looked like years later for those that had the ability to work, how they were able to then kind of let that refugee title go away. And it just they were a normal member of the community and that's how they were seen, versus others who then were stranded kind of in limbo in another camp setting, or were, propped up in, let's say, a hotel for months on end, unable to work and not seen as anything but that label. And so I think, to me, on just a personal level, those stories really wove their way into kind of the years leading to building EqualReach. I first started researching at the microwork level. So basically, AI training is what we know it today, like very low barriers to entry from a skill perspective. All you need is a phone and an internet connection. Like that was the entry point for a lot of organizations trying to get the job opportunities accessible remotely for their talent pools. And then it's really progressed from there. But I would chat with these organizations and be like, well, do I build the same thing that they're already doing? But they have the hyperlocal knowledge of teams. They have been doing this for years. I don't want to be their competitor. I want to fill a gap that they have and be someone who can amplify them. And I just couldn't figure out what that gap would be. And then when I was working in tech and, I saw the success of what started as a pilot and then rolled out this model where we were sending work to refugees in two of the world's largest refugee camps in East Africa. And the work was tremendous. And so the reputation of how high quality the work was started making its way around the business. Other businesses outside of our team started hearing about it and reaching out to me. And it was at the point where I got multiple emails like every other week of people saying, hey, I heard what you're doing. I didn't even know that sending work to refugees was possible. Why didn't we think about this sooner? How do I do this? And then I didn't have an organization that I could refer them to be that bridge and build that connection. And so that was that aha moment for me of like, okay, I think that's the role that I'm meant to play here. And because it took so long, it's really felt like the why has been so strongly rooted. And so on the days that it's really hard to run a startup when you're just doing your annual accounts or, you're updating contracts or anything that's like the least sexy parts of the startup life, that why is what keeps me coming back and gets my butt in the seat to keep working on this. And I love being able to look around at all these partners now and say, we can link arm hand in hand, because not only can we fulfill a need that businesses have, but we're also then filling a gap that all these great organizations that I've respected for years have as well.
Absolutely. Olena, I'm curious how your experience as a refugee has influenced your approach to when you first started as an intern and then, to now as a product lead. I would love to hear more about what your experience was like, not just learning the tool, but also starting to think through how that tool could then be directly translated to the vision that was already laid out.
I would probably start from maybe going back a little bit to this dignified work.
Yeah.
Which was also like a pain point for myself. Like Giselle was looking for, to give these dignified workplaces for people. And I was kind of from another side of this process, because I was looking for this dignified work and not just, having all this experience before I moved to the UK in branding, UX, UI design, in other tech and creative areas. And then being a refugee, when you go somewhere, you go, to the bottom of this, how do you call this pyramid?
Yeah, this hierarchy.
You only think about, basic things like food, where would you live, what would your kids do, like childcare and everything. And this is when your dignity kind of significantly, I don't know if it's correct to say in English, drops down. So you don't think really about dignity. You think more about money, so you can feed your kids, you can take care of your family. Most of refugee, I would say, they don't, and I keep repeating it whenever we talk about it, most refugee people, they would prefer to have this work opportunity instead of giving them just money or food. Because people think about refugees from this perspective. They are someone who you constantly needs to give money or food. This refugee kind of Stigma, yeah. So people see it in a negative way, but then when you think about them as a skilled person, experienced person, and they just need this opportunity so they can work, they won't ask for money or food or place to live. They will do it themselves like they did before they became refugees, basically. I think the main idea here when I think about new feature is how to make it easier for those talents to represent, to showcase their expertise. And then how can we make it easier for the client to see all those values and choose between them, and then streamline all this process. So it will be easier for both parties, and then we will have more clients coming to us, and then we can provide more workplaces for refugees.
Absolutely. And that's a great transition. I'd love to get a little more specific into the business model and how EqualReach works. So first, can you just outline for us what that process looks like, either from maybe the talent side, if someone wants to be part of EqualReach as a pool of talent, and from the business side, someone who has a project and needs to hire someone?
I think the way our model is built is we are incentivized to meet both kind of the supply and demand side and meet the needs of both and make it a trustworthy, valuable process for each group there. So kind of starting at the supply side, maybe when we on our delivery partner network, we call these delivery partners. These are the teams of vetted specialists in kind of very specific fields. So we've got a team focused on their SEO experts. We've got a team of digital marketers doing graphic design, reel editing, and social media management. We've got another team developing apps for big international initiatives. So we identify organizations that are refugee-led businesses, agencies. Some are charities that have a spin out for an agency. So maybe they're alumni of graduates after a 2-year marketing training course. They can then form a collective and participate and work together. So it's team centric, so that you have that hyper local support network where people not only are learning in a team environment from more experienced individuals, they're also getting kind of the project management layer included. They're having just relationships with coworkers rather than working in isolation. And part of our vetting process is we look for teams that are made of not only displaced talent, but also 30 to 50% from the local community as well, so that you have shared value creation and it's not just an us versus them mentality. For example, there's an amazing partner we work with, a delivery partner, where it's a mix of UK and Palestinian-based developers, and they've done incredible work for like NHS and really cool charities around the world. And you see like they after a certain time, your nationality and your background just kind of fades away and you just become friends and you become coworkers and you joke together. And I think that's so valuable in a team dynamic. So taking a step back from kind of when we find organizations that we love, they're either referred to us by partners. We work a lot with like groups like UNHCR, Mercy Corps, as we focus in on different regions that we want to expand to. And then we do some pretty robust vetting, not only looking at who they are as an organization, but the skills that their talent bring. We go through all the kind of legal compliance, sanction checks, like all of that. So it's a secure and safe option for business. We make sure we have the ability to pay them effectively and compliantly. So all of that goes into building out this incredible network of ready to work market relevance, our teams with market relevant skills. And then we go to the supply side, the business side, and we typically work in the UK, US, and EU for most of the businesses who have project-based work ready to go that, they needed a website redesigned yesterday. And so they submit it through our platform and we give them a curated list of 1 to 3 pre-vetted, pre-selected teams chosen for their project specifically that they get to choose from. One of my favorite features on our platform is we've got this comparison page where you can kind of shop the high level, like too long didn't read, TLDR summaries of each team and their proposal. We let the teams set their own prices. We let them set the terms that are typically the hardest ones for them to manage with. One of the challenges a lot of freelancers face is they'll only get paid at the end of a project. And if you have a 6-month project, maybe a freelancer can swing that or an agency. But if you're a small refugee-led organization that is barely making enough beyond, like I think of like Kakuma or Dadaab refugee camps in Kenya, the highest paying job there is $80 per month working full time for UNHCR. And if we can help someone make that in an hour or in a couple of hours, it can totally change the way that these teams were able to show up. But payment terms is a part of that. Like, can we do 100% or 50% upfront so that the teams are able to support the talent while they deliver the work? So even just in our smart contracting, we give the teams these levers and we show that those levers to clients so that they can pick and choose based on price, based on, what they're going to deliver, the, upsell opportunities and additional perks that each team provide. And all of that we facilitate through our platform. And then we just take a percentage-based fee on top of whatever rate the team sets. And so our incentive is aligned to make sure that a client it falls in love with one or many of those teams and starts the project and then comes back for multiple other projects.
Olena, as that process is happening, because there are so many moving pieces in there, I imagine that there's a lot of extra care that must be paid to different barriers of language, different security concerns. I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you and your team are thinking about that as you continue to develop the platform.
Yeah, sure. I think this is one of the most important things, actually, that we can. First thing is that we want to make it safe for the client and for this team as well. So none of them will be in a situation when they didn't get what they were promised. In any product, in any application, you think you know the best way how to build it, but then those users, they always want something different. And then they're like, oh, I haven't even think about it. Yeah, and this is brilliant. But then speaking about this services agreement, maybe Giselle can share more details about all this, how to make it safe. And
yeah, one of the things that we found is just talking with teams, most teams wouldn't have contracts in place. And so it'd typically be, hey, here over email is what we can deliver for you, or maybe even like on popular freelancing sites that many would be familiar with, they could deliver a project and then if the client wasn't happy with it, or like if the client said they weren't happy with it, but then went on to use it, but then use it as a reason to not get paid. Like if they didn't get anything up front, suddenly they've spent a month or 2 months delivering this massive piece of work and then walked away with nothing. And so, or if it's all over email, there's less protections for teams. And most teams don't have access to legal advisors to help develop these contracts. And so we developed these contracts to basically be the facilitation between the business and the team of experts being able to contract directly and give them these levers so that there's, clear as kinds, like there's this upfront acknowledgement of here's what you are getting from this proposal. Here are terms of how we work. Like it puts a client at ease because it's much more aligned with how any legitimate agency, in the UK or wherever else would present a proposal and a project to them. So we're just trying to build the infrastructure and the norms so that this becomes an easy yes. It's less of sending this work to a team because they're, refugee talent, or it's not a charitable reason. Ultimately, clients should come to us. It's because they're getting incredibly, often overlooked access to incredible talent, and that we're making the whole process of working with them as easy, trustworthy, and streamlined as possible.
Forgive me if this is an ignorant question, but I think I saw an FAQ on your website. The question was essentially, is it legal for us as a UK team to seek out talent from displaced communities? It was interesting that was even a question that needed to be addressed. This is a business, this is the private sector, and it's not about charity or anything like that, but because it does involve these additional geographical elements, I'm curious what additional constraints that creates for a business like yours.
Yeah, we put out some really interesting research on this. So if you go to equalreach.io, there's a whole section on this research toolkit, and we interviewed 50 plus employers of all sizes, major enterprises down to small, startups or medium-sized businesses. And we were asking them, about their experience, their interest, sending work to contractors in general, freelancers in general, and then the idea of sending up to refugee talent. And one of the biggest questions that came up was compliance. And it really underscored what I saw when I was working in big tech of sometimes even the perception of risk is just as big of a deterrent as actual risk. And in many cases, businesses, they think of contracting and outsourcing, and that's becoming really the norm. Like I look in the UK, I think 95% of businesses are small and medium-sized businesses. Of those, 70% work with freelancers as a normal part of their business. So this isn't an outlier way of working, but adding in that element of, well, what if I sent that work to refugee talent? There's just a perceived risk that comes up because it's an unknown. And in every country, there are kind of the big buckets of legal right to work. In the UK, as an asylum seeker, you don't have a legal right to work, but as a refugee, you can. In other countries, it's different. And so what goes on behind the scenes of the platform is we are doing all of that vetting and those checks and making sure that we're legally compliant. I have sat in way too many meetings with legal HR experts telling me, what the regulations are for these different countries. And we bake that then into the platform so that as a client, you honestly don't even think about it. Again, I never wanted to know this much about international tax law as I do now, but our hope is that a client doesn't even need to think about it. It's already pre-calculated. They see it all. It's in the invoice broken down, like everything that they need in order to, submit their end of year accounts for taxes. So again, that perception of risk I thought was a really interesting one. And because that question on compliance came up, that's why we put it in, FAQs so that we can help put people at ease.
How has the response been from clients? Because it's a challenge in and of itself to mitigate actual risk. Mitigating perceived risk seems like much more of a moving target.
It's been really exciting. So we had our first project and client December 2023. And since we have had consistent work through EqualReach and now our platform, and what that's meant for us is we always have kind of water in the pipes per se to identify where our gaps are from a product perspective or from a process perspective. But what we found is that clients keep on coming back and they tell their friends. We have not done any big paid advertising or like major marketing pushes, yet we've been featured in over 100 different publications, like featured by the International Labor Organization, the World Bank, UNHCR. Like these are major validators of our model so that, let's say if we're talking to a major enterprise and they're like, well, how do we know it's fair and dignified work? I'm like, well, let me send you a podcast we did with the organization that sets the standards and looks at EqualReach as an example of creating what good looks like for creating fair and dignified work. And so, beyond just the tech, like there's such a robust ecosystem that we're really trying to change the narrative and combat that stigma about, oftentimes I'll talk with a random founder at a co-working space in London, and they think of like, oh, a refugee. Honestly, when I think of refugee, I just think of someone sitting in a refugee camp, like without internet access, like who's been there for a long time and
low expertise.
Yeah, low expertise.
Like underskilled.
Yeah. There's so many variations of what that experience of displacement is like, just like variations of anything in life. But for that to be the single narrative that wins out, that's what we want to challenge. So even on our site, we've got a whole page like, this is refugee talent, honing in on like the skills that they bring rather than their situation.
I have heard you speak of 2026 as EqualReach's year of scaling. So I'm curious, especially from a platform standpoint, Olena, what does that look like and where is EqualReach going next?
We have a lot of experience right now with different size of clients and different levels of expertise of delivery partners. And we identified all these like pain points and all those points of growth. When the foundation is built already, we can add some extra features that, you know, all those nice to haves that will make platform not just workable, can I say it's workable, but, you know, easy to use and intuitive. And then I must mention the AI integration, because this is a huge thing right now. And something that, I don't know, we must admit that something that we built already, it's not really relevant, because with AI, we can make it
even faster
and easier. And we don't want to be, you know, behind other platforms. We want to be at the top, and we want to be on the same speed with all the major developments.
Yeah, like as the bar keeps on moving, we want to be right where at the cutting edge of we just launched an impact reporting functionality. So as kind of one of those additional value adds to make the platform not only workable but a delight to use, we got some funding from the Bosch Foundation to explore adding this as a feature. And so we did a ton of research figuring out, well, how do we tell this story well to make both the business case and the social case really resonate with companies so that they see the value of every single project they submit through us. So we then integrated it into our platform of tracking, you know, the metrics of how many jobs were created per project, how many women, how many displaced, how many from the local communities, what are the stories involved behind that? Like the quotes of individuals who were on those teams, what parts of the world were there? We've got this map that shows where they are. They can click in and see the stories of what's happening in those countries and why someone might be displaced. And then also then to see and showcase, this is the value that your business got. We're now able to track the key performance indicators, the KPIs that a company cares about, and give that as a starting point for a team to then, you know, be able to speak the language of that business and baseline, okay, where are you starting? And then once a project is delivered, let's show how that KPI has changed over time and the value that we've brought to you. And then we can make that come all alive in these reports and give fast wins of, you know, badges that companies can use on their annual reporting if they want to use this as a way to tell the story that, yes, they not only got the job done, but they did good at the same time. And we can be that third party validation to showcase that. So that's just one of those features that kind of we're able to bring to life. And even in this week, we land on our biggest projects ever. So it just feels like we've built the foundation. We've got this moment of lift. And now we just are going to be, there's a lot that we want to keep under wraps. We'll do another podcast in 6 months and show you what we've been building. But it's really exciting to think, okay, we can see a problem and not just complain about it. We can go and directly address it and build something that solves it.
I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I think the whole sort of anchor to this conversation for me was talking about what does it look like to create an impact-driven business. Has there been a particular moment or milestone where you really felt like the vision of EqualReach didn't just have interest, or maybe not even momentum, but actual like traction, where it really felt like I think you know that you're onto something from the beginning, that why was so strong, but where it really feels like the reaction, the response from the rest of the world is there to continue to uplift this forward? Was there any particular moment where it really started to feel that way?
I think for me, it was probably during One Young World.
Yeah.
When we saw all these people with brilliant ideas and everything seems possible. When you see around you people who have those ideas and be able to build, even if it's like a simple MVP right now, it feels so good. And we had so many people come into our booth at One Young World telling us like, wow, guys, you're doing an amazing job. Like, how did you even come up with this idea? How do you do this? And we would tell them, we had some people we had a chat with someone, and then at some point they would say, oh, we work in the ministry, or we work in this corporation, and we do want to know more about you because we see the value of it. So, our progress became visible, not just for us, but just for people who who can see from different perspective. Of course, we see the goal and we go there and we grow toward this goal. But then when someone acknowledges and recognizes this effort and how it works, it actually works now. This was probably one of the biggest moments for me.
Yeah. And for context, One Young World is this event that happens every year with 2,200 leaders from 190 plus countries, both from the private sector and also leaders of NGOs, charities, and more. And they all get together. And honestly, it was the same one for me. It was we had a main stage speaking slot to talk about what we were doing. And at the very end, we put out kind of a cheeky ask and realized, collectively, that room of leaders had multi-million-dollar budgets, probably on the daily if you added everything up. Like, what would happen if everyone in that room committed 10% of their budgets, whether it be 50,000 or 50 million, to outsourcing the work that they already have, to displaced communities? And what sort of ripple impact could that have? To Olena's point of letting someone be seen for their contributions to society, giving work and purpose, and not just seeing them as in need of, a beneficiary in need of charity. And that was so cool, because when I made that cheeky ask, all of a sudden I couldn't see with the lights, but it was 70-80% of the room raised their hands to show that engagement. We got so many messages, and now major international companies who are now setting up projects for and pilots for, who have been reaching out. I thought the one that you were going to mention, though, was last week she got featured on the BBC. That was pretty validating.
Yeah, that must be. What was that experience, Olena?
It was strange, to be honest. I picked up my son from school and asked my friend if she can spend some time with him, because I have this BBC interview. And she was like, what? What is happening? And now we have a lot of jokes internally, what do I do now? Shall I own a super yacht or
buy a media company?
Buy a social media company.
Absolutely. That's amazing. I have one question to kind of close out this conversation that we ask: if someone wanted to do what you were doing, what would be your playbook for them? And so I think my question for your case would be, for someone who wants to build a business, but maybe specifically build a mission-driven business, not just a company that does some good on the side, but one where that mission is baked into the model and they are equally prioritized and pursued, what would you say to them? What do they need to know going in that they might not?
Welcome to the future of business. I really do think that this should become the norm, because customers are demanding it more. They're looking at companies and seeing companies right now that are falling flat on the making the world a better place, Silicon Valley style, way of succeeding by making money and purely for themselves. And I think early on in my career, I worked with some incredibly wealthy individuals that I would see kind of the end of the story of they built a business, they sold a business, they earned a ton of money, they climbed the corporate ladder, and some of them were the least happy people I have ever met. And I mean, as an entrepreneur, I pull back and think of those places okay, well, what does success look like at the end of my life? It does not look like building a castle, for one. It looks like seeing things that are wrong in the world and saying, okay, I'm not just going to complain about that, but I want to be a part of the solution. And there are so many major humanitarian, environmental, everything in between challenges. An entrepreneur needs to start with a problem, and talk about a great green space for problem is finding a business solution for some of these, major challenges of our day that you will be so proud to tell your grandchildren about and have that be a part of your legacy. I'm so proud of what we've built so far, and we're just at the beginning, it feels like. And so again, start with that why of why does this matter? You can figure out the how along the way, with so many tools like Bubble, and, you can learn a new skill to start your business within a couple of hours or a day with AI coaching you along the way. The how will will come along, but leverage business as a tool. Don't just say that it's going to be governments or it's going to be NGOs that are the ones that address those big, sticky challenges of our day. Like, we need businesses as well. And especially now with funding cuts around the world, the charities are struggling to address these on our own. Like, why wouldn't we use the technology, the creativity, and that like passionate problem solving nature of entrepreneurs and technologists to solve these challenging problems? It's not solve a challenging problem and don't make money. Like, ideally, you align those incentives so that when you create something that matters, you are also bolstering your team, your network, and the customers and communities that you're building to serve.
I would probably say trust your gut.
Yeah.
And go for it, because nowadays everything is so different. You can do whatever you want. And then looking at what Giselle builds, I would probably mention trust. And we talk about it a lot in, between us on our meetings. And I just admire how Giselle uses this trust as currency because one more highlight probably is going back to the previous question, like the moment you see something changed, as we can see our team is getting bigger. I can see how Giselle put in trust in people, how she did put trust in me, because I didn't think about myself as a product lead. Because Giselle believed in me that I can be a product lead. She saw some qualities in me. I became a product lead, and now I can build this platform. Same thing with some other team members who come in, also Bubble developers, young people who has some expertise, but then they haven't built anything like this before. They don't know what to build. It's not always about technical skills. We trust them, and often our meetings are like, I trust your decision on this. It just works like this. Because people love now what they're doing. People want to build it, make it better, and not just people see the value of the platform. So I think if you believe in your mission, if you have your people around you and trust them, you can build anything.
Giselle, you mentioned when you first spoke to Olena, one of the first things that really made the case for you was her statement about empathy-led design. As the team is expanding and as you are building this currency of trust, which I thought was a great way of putting it, what are you looking for when you hire? Because maybe that is also something that could be very instructive for others who are looking to build their superstar team to achieve their impact-driven business.
Yeah. I think starting with, yes, you need the skills and the competency to be able to deliver. But sometimes, especially with us, like no one had built a platform like ours before. We didn't know what we didn't know going into it. And so I knew that we needed people who had the character and the drive and the belief in that why behind the scenes to be able to ride through, all right, I don't know the answer to this, but I'm going to figure it out. And trust on our team, it isn't given to everyone. It's earned. But once you earn it, I think when we see each member of our team as someone who could be an owner in their space, like it means that we can accomplish more. So like find those people that you can trust, that you can believe in, that you want to be working with, not just do they have the hard skills, yes or no, because those will come. Like if you have the right person, I think that is far more important. And knowing that, all right, you might not be where you want to be right now or where I want you to be, but like you are someone that I want to have on my team in the long run. And I think that's far more important than these kind of fast, like, all right, 3-month decisions. And then it's not someone, that is really going to play the long game with you. And that's, the startups, like, just don't die is a good foundational concept. And there are hard days, there are like tough things that you just don't know how to get through. And so having a team that you really enjoy working with, like we just had a monthly business review where now we're starting to integrate the business, like broader perspective and the marketing perspective into our product meeting so that we can see how it all holistically fits together as we prioritize right. And we just have so much fun on those calls. And they've become my favorite time of the week to see the team. And so building a startup is hard. Don't die and don't do it alone.
That's great. Yeah. Don't Die is a great playbook in and of itself. Awesome.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and just wrap us up with some quick rapid fire questions. No pressure on these. If you want to answer with one word, one sentence, or a couple of sentences, that's totally fine. We'll start with, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Ooh, my goodness. I think it was changing all the time, like depending on the age I was in. But then the only thing was, and it actually, I just realized it basically. The only thing was I was looking for, not for role, let's say, I was looking for people. I remember myself when I found the group of people like that, I saw passion in them. I thought, oh, this is what I want to do. And just when I grew up, I realized it wasn't because of the role, the business, the area itself. It was because of the people.
Yeah.
Because when you see this passion in people and you see this drive, you can, achieve some big goals with this.
Yeah.
And the process is going to be really excited. So,
my answer is a lot more dumbed down than that. I wanted to be a storm chaser, which works well because startups are just as chaotic sometimes as tornadoes.
Yeah. Don't die.
Yeah, don't die.
That is so interesting. I love asking this question because I hear so many different answers. I've never heard that before. That's so interesting.
There you go.
When you sit down to work, what are the top things that you need with you to work?
Ooh.
I need some sunny weather. I literally work on solar batteries.
She says in the UK.
I was going to say.
Yeah.
This challenge actually of my life in the UK is you were going to be a storm chaser. Yeah. I'm a sun chaser. I'm like literally chasing the sun all the time. Sometimes I need to do some push-ups just to wake myself up. Sometimes I need to be quiet. Sometimes I need loud music, but then probably sun would be the biggest thing. And then coffee is a nice to have.
Nice.
Coffee is a must-have for me. And I've got 2 little sticky notes right next to my computer monitor. Progress over perfection. That reminder is what I need on a daily, because I think both of us are like, we want to make it perfect for, everything that we produce. And sometimes you just gotta make a minimal likable, then a minimal lovable product, and then you build from there.
Yeah, I saw this sticky note when I first time visited Giselle, and I think I've learned how not to be a perfectionist, because it's really might ruin your business. While keeping Giselle from being perfectionist, I think I was always like, Giselle, oh, can we have this and this? Can we build this? This would be so cool. I'm like, no, we can't do this right now. You need to build this foundation first. No, nice to have. Sorry.
That's a great tip, though. In order to cure your own perfectionism, try and cure somebody else's. That's a great tip.
You're welcome.
I'm curious for both of your takes on this, but Olena, since as product lead, this might be more for you. Do you consider Bubble more of a creative tool or more of a technical tool?
Ooh. I think it depends on the person. Like if this is more creative person, I bet they come up with some really creative project or app or whatever. Again, our platform is really complex. I would say it's a lot of technical things right now on our platform, and I'm glad we have someone who can build this, because I consider myself more creative person. So I can come up with these crazy creative ideas and now ask our development team, can we please do this tomorrow?
Right.
And then they say, no, this is nice to have. Yeah.
Yes, this is how it works.
I think it unleashes creativity, but then it lets you get technical and lets you get as technical as you need. I think I am seeing depths of Bubble that I didn't even know existed when we started, of like, oh, we can build that. Like I'll bring an insanely complex idea like that in that creative state to our engineering manager and the dev team, and to be like, yeah, we can do that. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Wow.
Yeah.
By next week, what?
we have Hassan, our tech lead, and his favorite phrase, I hope he won't be offended. His favorite phrase is "make sense."
Yeah.
So whenever me and Giselle, we like given this huge description of what we want to be built on the platform with the hope we can build it, he's always like, yeah, makes sense. And just comes back in a week with this structured PRD and all the, sometimes we do need subscription on something like plugin, but overall, most of the time it's, yes, we can build it.
And it's also that trust that you mentioned that we were talking about earlier, right? Awesome. This next question is maybe a little bit of like a hot take question, but what is something that you think other entrepreneurs are not paying enough attention to? Or on the flip side, what is a frustrating mistake that you commonly see businesses and maybe startups making?
Starting with the how and not the why. I see so many founders building these like insanely cool apps or solutions. So I say solutions in air quotes because they're taking a new technology and they're thinking up, oh, this is probably a need for someone somewhere. I'm going to build it and then I'm going to go find the customer versus starting with the customer, start with the problem. This is business school 101 and work your way backwards from there. Because when you're actually solving a need, you can then use whatever technology is now at your fingertips to make it happen. But if you just build something that then no one wants, I mean, talk about like a great learning experience, but also like so much potential missed when you were so close. Like just flip that and find a problem and find all the cool tools and programs and platforms available to make it happen.
I would probably say, again, go back to trust. Not using trust is a glue of the business.
Sure.
When people just are just an employee that you can get work done from them and that's it. You use just like a 10% of their potential. When then you build this trust, you build real relationship with them. And then this person became your co-pilot, became your supporter, became someone who can give you idea that no one will give you and give you feedback that someone will be just, I don't know, afraid or embarrassed or anything else to give you. So you can then monetize this feedback basically. So I trust.
Absolutely. We talked a little bit about AI, and I know that's a big consideration for you as you continue to expand all of the features of EqualReach's platform. I'm curious for, how you both are thinking about AI and tech in this new, era that we're emerging into in general. But my question is, as AI helps us do more and more things, what is one skill that humans still need to be good at?
I see more and more value in the soft skills of project management, of storytelling. I mean, storytelling is the hot new thing now that these massive companies are paying so much money for. But as AI becomes more competent, what makes us human is what becomes more valuable. And so leading with empathy, leading with understanding, leading with communication, really hearing a need, and then going and using tools to figure out how to solve it. But I even look at like the teams that we work with and how that bar of, what is expected, but also what you can deliver is so much higher with every new release that comes out of new AI tools. We had a team, it's a female-led marketing team out of Palestine. It's usually really hard for them to travel outside the West Bank to work with an international client. And yet we matched them with this major enterprise for a video training project. And all they have was meeting with the client, understanding, like they didn't have any existing video assets or voice recordings or like studio kind of spaces to record this content. And so they used AI, like they used a tool, got a clip of the different members of this company's team. They got selfies. That was all they had to work with. And then a script. And all of a sudden, I just saw the latest version last week of this video. And it was like fully like come to life avatars of these individuals that if I didn't know was AI, I would have assumed was just like a member of their team in a studio setting giving a full talk. And just to see the ingenuity of, the AI tool is what they use to solve that very real like constraints to deliver this project. But the creativity and the the out of the box thinking and the kind of empathy and project management to go through all the full delivery of that project and make the client super happy. That's what really stood out for that team.
It just seems so quickly changing every day. All the news we hear about AI. I would probably say that as an advice, don't put too much trust into AI. I love that we can use AI as a tool to streamline processes, to analyze. For me, it was a game changer, to be honest, because being neurodivergent, then English is not second, but let's say second language. So, understanding the culture, I used it for things from, creating a complex PRD to some things like, okay, I've got this message from someone. What do these people really mean? Sometimes I struggle to understand someone because of, cultural barrier or language barrier or whatever, like mood. So I love that we can use AI for, again, streamlining to make lives easier. But then I don't know, maybe just because I was born in 1985, so I saw all this Terminator.
Yeah,
movie.
Terminator.
I can't just forget about it, so I'm a little bit cautious.
I hear that. My last rapid fire question. What is the most memorable feedback you've ever received in your career?
Oh, honestly, I think when I started working at EqualReach, this first maybe 6 months, when we had a meeting and I would come up with an idea or opinion or something, and then they would listen to it and they, oh yes, this is so helpful. Thank you, Olena. And I'm like, wow, like, really? I thought it's a crap idea. And because of it, it wasn't just one feedback, but just something that was every weekly meeting. It helped me to gain so much more confidence in myself, which now helps me, to build this product, because now I believe, as well as Giselle believed before, that I can do this and all my ideas are really interesting. Maybe not all of them, but okay, let's be realistic. But then, it just made me feel professional, which I didn't feel before. So this is my answer.
Mine would be when I was deciding, should I leave this cushy corporate tech job and go and build this thing that I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know, what will happen if I do this. It was the feedback I got from mentors of mine, of even within the business, even my skip level manager, of saying, okay, what if I left to actually do this? When I went to these leaders and kind of brought this idea nervously, being like, maybe should I do this? And their full-hearted encouragement to go and build this, build it now. Don't let this be a regret. If you have an idea and you think that you have a unique way to solve it, don't let the moment pass you by, and don't just stay in comfort. And that was the best feedback that I needed to say, okay, I'm going to do this. I don't know what's going to happen, and it scares me a ton, but I'm going to say yes to founding a startup and learning all of the things that you have to learn to make it possible.
Perfect. It's been a pleasure to speak with you both. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's been really fun having this conversation.
Especially this last part with the short questions.
Yeah. It's fun to reflect back to on our journey of you kind of forget all of what you've done month over month, let alone year over year. So yeah, thank you for the unintentional therapy session.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, both. I really appreciate it. Have a great one. And congratulations on all the success so far.
Thank you.
If you want to learn more about Giselle, Olena, and their work at EqualReach, check out the links in our show notes. If you're liking the show, please consider leaving us a like and a review. Those really help others to find the show as well. Let's go ahead and turn it over to Bubble announcements. First up, for anyone building a native mobile app, deep linking support for push notifications is now live, which means your app's notifications can now route beyond your app's home screen to a specific customizable view. Second, our revamped Bubble Academy is always being updated. Most recently, our team launched an interactive security course taught by instructor Petter Amli, who many of you know well in the Bubble community. Last, Bubble co-founder and co-host of this show, Emmanuel, just hosted his April AMA last week. You can watch the recording or read the recap blog using the link in our show notes. That's it for today's episode. Thanks again to the team at EqualReach, and thank you so much for listening. We'll see you in the next episode.